Welcome to Empower and Evolve, and I'm your host, Dunstan, and thanks for coming into today's episode. Now, this podcast is designed for those looking to break free from stagnation and enhance their well-being through actionable insights and inspiring stories. So you'd never miss an episode, hit that follow button and follow us through our social media accounts. Now, if you find value in our discussions, consider sharing this podcast with friends who you think might benefit listening today. Now let's get started on this journey of empowerment and transformation. Hi, Dun here, and thanks for coming back to Empower and Evolve. Now, last week we talked about habits, right? And somebody actually asked a follow-up question that as we're trying to build habits, we can't stop and ask ourselves that, hey, I can do that. I like to do that, but I don't want to do it now. And maybe I'll just do it tomorrow, or maybe the next week, or next month, right? And it made me wonder, right? Is procrastination really that bad? I mean, is it really good? Or is it bad? And maybe what we can do to start taking action. So, without further ado, let's dive in and talk about this more. So, procrastination actually can come in different sides. You can look at it from different sides, right? Some people, they like to work early. Some people, they like to work, during crunch time because they feel they work better. But a lot of people, generally speaking, they tend to fail or they can't really be successful when they try to procrastinate. Why? Why? Because it feels like, you're carrying a heavy weight. You're trying to rush things. Sometimes you tend to miss out the key details. And when you think about procrastination, I mean, I forgot the title of this TED Talk. Explaining why sometimes it's good to procrastinate. But for the majority of everyone watching or listening to today's episode, you know, I am also sometimes I'm guilty of doing things late or doing it earlier, and there are reasons behind it. And again, I've always mentioned in this podcast that we have to understand the why we are doing things, right? To make it compelling. And when I think about that statement alone, people who feel that higher sense of urgency will put in extra effort, extra time. You become 100% focused when you try to procrastinate. But there is also a fear, especially for those people who are not comfortable in that rush time frame, right? You only have maybe an hour to make a report versus you have 3 hours to do your report, right? It can go both ways, right? You could fail because you missed on key details or you weren't really able to put out there what you really wanted to do or your intention of what you're doing, right? And that's why some people prefer to do it earlier, right? Psychology will tell you that since we talked about that fear, when you have that fear of failure, you want to start earlier, right? Because in the event that you need time to revise, you need to rethink what you were doing, at least you have ample time to prepare, ample time to review, revisit before you finalize things, right? Before you really start doing it. It just gives you that space maybe to rethink things. That is this really what I want to do? Right? And when that crunch time happens, it just kicks you in, okay, I have to make a decision now. Not later, not tomorrow. It's just now. And that sudden rush of decision making, it puts a higher sense of commitment, because if you say yes, I'll do it now, you drop everything. You put your effort to start doing it, right? Regardless of the outcome. The second thing that you'd like to think about that psychology around that procrastination is sometimes people tend to have this perfectionism mindset, right? And why you don't want to procrastinate is because you want to perfect what you're doing, right? It goes both ways, just like I mentioned. I mean, it could be to your advantage or to your disadvantage. I mean, I have known people personally who can create content on the fly. I mean, these are trainers back in the BPO space, wherein if I ask them to create the content for me, and then they'd ask me how long or how much time do they have before they create that content, and if I tell them 2 weeks, they'd usually start doing the training content the day itself, or maybe a day before, because in their mind for the past few weeks or those past few days, they've just been thinking about it and not really doing the actual training content. Others would start doing it a day or two after, so they have ample time, so we can review and discuss it before they present it, right? And in both cases, actually, I don't have any issues with how they were able to execute, as long as it's delivered on the scheduled time. And these two people that I know, from both ends of that spectrum, can really do well. Surprisingly, right? Surprisingly. And when you try to procrastinate as well, and the negative aspect of that perfectionism is you always feel that, hey, is it right? You always have that doubt. It has to be that you're not doing it right. That's why you wanna, okay, I'm not gonna start it because I have to think about it, think long and hard. And it goes both ways, right? Again, it goes both ways. Now, sometimes people will intentionally procrastinate, and it's not just their natural nature, natural tendency, because if I finish it now earlier than the deadline, what reward do I get? Right? Imagine when imagine kindergarten kids, when you give children a task to do, like fix their toys, or fix their bed, or clean their room. How often do you get them to do it immediately? Maybe that's a good thought, good thing to think about, right? And chances are they won't really start doing it until two things happen. First, you get mad, or you tell them that there's a reward at the end of the task if they finish doing it, right? And thinking about kids and that example of them procrastinating on doing something, it now goes further up as adults. It replicates itself as adults. If I finish it now, what reward do I get? What punishment do I get if I don't do it now? Right? And sometimes if the reward isn't good, isn't compelling enough, the reason isn't compelling enough, you put it off on your side. And you may be doing other things, like maybe do watch Netflix or play mobile games, or maybe I don't know, right? And on the different side of things, like if you're cooking meals and there's a prep time, you want to be able to cook a tender meat, right? You have to put in the time to prepare and cook. And you can't do it on a rush, because if you rush it, the meat's not gonna cook the right way, or how tender you want it, right? Now, I'd like to I'd like you guys to think about this. And I've mentioned about psychology around procrastinating. How about you? What is your trigger to procrastinate? In my personal take, um, it really depends. Depends on the task. Depends on my competency on the skill. Because if I know I work better at crunch time, I would usually put it off. But again, that's a bad habit, right? Because if I can do it early and if I need revisions, then I would have the ample time to revise, right? And the downside of procrastinating, right? I mentioned about the good parts of it, right? You have that 100% laser focus. You 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 open a certain part of your brain actually that helps you, um, like it opens you up to a certain level of yourself that's really better, right? When you're doing a certain task. The cost of it though is if you do the other side, I mean, there's stress involved, definitely. I mean, you're rushing. If, let's say, you have something that you're doing that is also urgent and important, right? Because of you procrastinating and you not foreseeing that there's going to be a potential conflict, what happens now is you get stressed. That urgent, important thing gets put aside. And once you finish doing that procrastinated task, you go back to the other task that you were doing and you have now more stress because you know you have a deadline for that and you're trying to rush things to get it done, right? um, there is also a chance and a possibility that you won't be able to do it right, because especially if you're not that comfortable, if your skill level is not to that degree that you can say that, hey, I can do this even if I'm sleeping, right? And that's a factor. Honestly, that's a bad factor or a good factor to take into consideration, because when you think about it, if you're not an expert on something and you're trying to do something, and if you're not be able to do it right the first time, then there's rework, there's time spent, time wasted, effort wasted, stress there. The stress is also there, right? And personally, I don't want you to have that. So here are just a few things that I think you can do when you think about when do you want to procrastinate and when you can start breaking, especially if you're a person who's known to just do it on the last minute, and start building that habit of doing things a little bit earlier, right? A little bit earlier. So first, of course, you want to ask yourself the why. Why are you doing it? Why do you want to do it next week versus doing it maybe midweek? Because if you clearly understand the why, then it puts that mindset, that compellingness in what you're doing. Two, of course, check your calendar. I mean, use time management techniques. Check your calendar for that period between now and the deadline of that task. Normally, I will tell you that every day you put 20% of time in your day for everything else that's not planned. That's a kind of healthy average based on my personal experience. And in a day, let's say if you're working for 8 hours, expect 1 hour of your day you're gonna be doing something you haven't really planned to do for the day, right? Three, understand your work patterns. Especially, you want to know how you get distracted at work, right? If you know that you need to have that laser focus time, like in my case, sometimes I work virtually. I can turn off my notification so that I don't get any notifications when I'm working, right? Um, Another thing that also distracts me is, let's say, since I'm in the office, or if on days that I'll be in the office, people will have to come and ask me questions. They just walk by my office, and I actually put a sign. And funny enough, you'd see this like the doctor is in, the doctor is out, or the doctor is busy. I kind of place something like that outside my door, that do not disturb. Just send me an email, and I'll get back to you, so that they know that I'm really on a crunch time period. That it can be this, especially if I know the task is really heavy, and the time that I have may not be enough. I put that out there, right? Next is creating your to-do list. When you think about it, I'm already old. Why do I need to have a to-do list? I tell you, if it's not part of your routine, it's not already a habit of what you do day in, day out. Like, let's say you do groceries every Saturday, and then laundry every Wednesday evening. And then if it's not part of your routine, somebody tells you, "Oh, you're free Wednesday night for dinner," and then you immediately said yes without thinking, "Hey, it's laundry day," and you're running out of clothes to wear for the following day, right? You're gonna have a problem, right? So if you know your to do list and you know your schedule, you can either in that scenario move that dinner on a separate day, or do your laundry a day before. Very simple concept of how you can manage your to do list and managing your time, right? And sometimes it's not always going to be perfect. It's not going to be going the way you planned it. And always have that self compassion, Okay, I didn't do well this time. I have to make sure, if let's say I have to make a content, I have to start working as early as Monday instead of Thursday, because I need to make sure I do the right research for the content, right? I read enough content related to the topic I'm going to discuss. And I'll be honest, sometimes, because I know how hectic some weeks can be, like in a month, I actually sometimes do maybe one or two episodes in advance, just to make sure that in the 20% of the unknown in my weekly schedule or daily schedule, I have enough time that I can meet my deliverables. I can commit to what I want to do, which is, like in this case, my podcast, right? And on the flip side of giving yourself that compassion, I also want you to visualize that you're able to do the task. A good example of this is F1 drivers. I mean, I don't know if you guys watch F1 or you watch documentaries on F1, on Formula One racing, right? They actually train on the rest of the week. They have their physical training. They do time in front of a simulator, right? Them practicing on a simulator on a certain track, it practices their mind, their body, their hand and eye coordination. How are they going to run the race, and how are they gonna win in that race, right? It helps them that come race day, their mind and their body are attuned already it seems going wherever. Sorry about that. Come race day, their mind and their body are so synced with the training that they did practicing that on a simulator, that it becomes automatic for them. Another exaggerated example of this one is an old movie by Jackie Chan. I forgot which year it was released. I think it was late 80s, early 90s. The movie is called Thunderbolt. I mean, I'm not promoting his movie, but if you have time to search it online or search a clip around Thunderbolt. He was a race car driver, and even before video driving F1 simulations were there, uh, he has a racing seat, a steering wheel, and a manual transmission. I mean, for those who can still remember how to drive a manual, and especially like me when I was a kid, I imagine I'm shifting from first gear to second gear and so on and so forth. So in that movie, there was a scene wherein he was practicing in his mind the track, how he would turn the steering wheel and how he would shift his hand from holding two hands on the steering wheel and then shifting down to the clutch, the manual transmission, and shifting the gears manual and then going back. It's he has to continue that fast, and he was getting timed on how fast he can complete X number of task turns shifts, right? It was aimed to improve his reaction time, and at the same time, it also helps him to visualize how he's gonna do it actually in his actual race, right? So visualizing actually helps. So when you're trying to do a task, visualize how you're gonna do it. Like in my case, if I have a talk in front of a public, I would already visualize what I'm going to wear, what will be my hand gesture, which side of the stage or the crowd or the audience would I be looking at. I visualize that already. I visualize how much time I'm going to spend writing my content. I visualize the audience even clapping, right? It motivates me because I know, hey, the audience clap because I know the content was good. The training or the talk that I did was good, right? It motivates me, and at the same time, I think I should revise that. I should do it this way instead. So I have ample time to come that actual presentation or that talk because I already visualized it in my head so many times. It's just like you're doing it as if you're sleeping. You've mastered it as if it was the back of your hand. So, to wrap things up, when you want to overcome procrastination, and I'm telling you, it could go both ways, right? It really depends on your appetite to break it and how you capitalize that procrastination mindset. It requires you to have patience and persistence, mindset, and a higher level of commitment and consciousness. Because it's not easy to break a bad habit. More so, it's harder for you to understand and master the art of when to procrastinate and when to do it early. I mean, there is a sweet spot in between. I shared my personal experience of how I find my own sweet spot around it. But you will also find your own. And if you'd like to talk about that and help me or help me and my team here at Empower and Evolve help you guys find that sweet spot, feel free to send us an email at empowerevolving@gmail.com. And I'll be more than happy to set up a 30-minute conversation, maybe an hour session with you, offline, of course, to work things out, see how your schedule is, see how you do things. And then we'll work and help you in that journey to become a better version of you. So with that, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And remember, here at Empower and Evolve, our goal is to help you become a better version of you. Stay safe. Take care. Catch you next week. Bye for now. Hey buddy, thank you for joining us on this transformative journey of empowerment and growth. Now remember, it's not just about evolving. It's about embracing that incredible power within you to become the best version of yourself. Keep striving for greatness, because together, we can create a world where empowerment knows no bounds. And if you find value in today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with someone who could use that little inspiration. Until next time, stay empowered, stay inspired, and keep shining brightly on your path to evolution. With Empower and Evolve, you have the tools to unleash your potential and rewrite your story. Let's continue to evolve together.